All right. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for checking in, clicking the link. Finishing up a Jolly Rancher. I keep coughing, so maybe I'll get another one when this one's gone. So tonight is no different than any other night, is it? It's the same as it always is. We did a little bit of studying last week from Philippians chapter 4, where the commandment is to rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I'll say rejoice. And what was the way what was Paul's way there in Philippians 4 to help us do that? We had to think about something good, didn't we? Whatever is true, whatever is honorable or just or pure or lovely or commendable, if there is any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. That was our mission Sunday, to think about these things. Think about it, that's really been our mission my entire ministry. Think about these things. Point to Christ and think about him. See how much better he is. See how glorious he is. See how worthy he is. And tonight is no different. We're here to do the same thing. There's a fine line, I think, between letting the things that happen, letting events and all of the things that happen in life dictate our thoughts and dictate the content of my sermons. And using those things to learn more about God. There's a fine line between letting those things dictate our thoughts and using those things to learn more about God. We don't want the pulpit to be a place of politics. We don't want it to be a place of just responding to everything that happens around us. But we do want it to be a place where we glorify him. We want it to be a place where we can look at the things that are happening around us and we can say, now, look at God. Just as comparing darkness reveals the nature of light. What is light? Well, here's some darkness, and this will show you what light is. Just as using a dull knife and then sharpening it. How do you know what sharp is? Well, because I've seen it dull. Just as comparing evil against good and comparing judgment against mercy. The reason we understand mercy is because we understand judgment. What is mercy otherwise? What is mercy if everyone has it automatically all the time? But that's not the case. Some are judged so that those who have mercy can understand what mercy is. Well, in the same way as these examples, the events that happen around us can teach us about who our God is. They can reveal, they can inform our definition of God. Who is he? What kind of God is he? Well, today, there are a lot of people who are very anxious or angry or outright scared. First, I'll just say this. Let me just help you here. Let me calm you down. When you drove over here, did you see any mobs? You look out your window right now, do you see any, you might see a fire, I hope not. But it won't be because a bunch of people showed up and started burning the place down. You don't see looters. We don't have those things, and it's going to be okay. it really is going to be okay. It's not just wishful thinking, and it's not just trying to calm people down. It is genuinely true that we have a lot more going for us than against us. Not just as the church, even as Americans, even as our lives, as human beings, we have so much going for us that's positive. That commandment, whatever is true, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, whatever is excellent, is as true for us tonight, and maybe even more useful for us tonight than at a lot of other times in our lives. Because it's when you're in the dark that you see the light and you realize just how bright it is. And so I want to encourage you. I want to help you look at the good. I want you to see who our God is. And the way we're going to do it tonight is compare him against things like what we've seen going on right now. We can take those things, we can look at them. They're not going to dictate our thoughts. They're not going to dictate our theology or our sermons or our time together, but we can use them and examine these things, and we can say, and look at how much better God is. The thing I want to focus on tonight specifically is in the way he reigns. That's what I've called this sermon, Our God Reigns. I want to think about what he looks like sitting on his throne. Not the physical description. What are the characteristics of his reign? We've had a bunch of presidents. We could go through the history. We could say, well, this typified his presidency. He was known for this. These were his accomplishments. These were his failures. What do we see when we talk about God? Especially when we compare him to the others. Well, I've just, off the top of my head, wrote down a few ways that we can compare him to them. And when I'm saying them, I'm talking specifically tonight about government, but not our government necessarily. That's the one that we probably understand more than any other. So we'll use that. But in general, is it not true that we can compare their crookedness to his righteousness? If you know what light is because of dark, you know what righteousness is because of wickedness. I don't know that there's ever been a time when the majority of people in power weren't at least very prone to being crooked. We don't have anything special there. If you'll look, we're not going to read from 2 Kings, but if you'll just glance through, starting in about chapter 10, chapter 11, somewhere in there, you can actually see in the first few verses of each one, of each of the kings, these are the kings of Israel as they came. The way it works is Israel, remember Israel was divided, 2 nations. You had Israel in the north and Judah in the south, 10 tribes in the north, 2 in the south. The way it worked was that Israel had 19 kings. There are a total of 19. And Judah had 20. Do you know how many good kings Israel had in that time? 0. Judah had 8 good kings. Of their 20, 8 of them we would consider them somewhat good. But they came in cycles. So even when you had a good king, you still had to worry about when he died, because they were going to bring on this brand new way of abandoning God. But the thing that I want you to see, if you'll just kind of glance through those, chapters 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, you can see on up to 17, it just keeps going, 18. This new king comes along, this new king comes along, this new king comes along. And if you look, you can find many times in those chapters where it says he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Now just think about that for a second, because these kings had an anointing from God, and they had access to the priesthood. They had access to all of the law and the prophets up to that point. And yet they were still such wicked men. They did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And it wasn't just, they said bad things or they made crooked deals. These people, well, they were guilty of bribery. They were guilty of extortion. They even went so far as to burn their children alive in sacrifice to false gods. Wicked. Utterly wicked people. And it hasn't been any different in history. Kings and the rulers before them, there were good ones. There were very bad ones. But all of them were prone to the same kinds of wickedness. There's always been that cycle of good and bad. There's always been that threat of taking advantage of the people. What do we call, what is our word to describe the current state of our government? What do we call it? We call it a swamp. Why do we call it that? Well, it's not because they're so righteous and holy. They're crooked. And everybody knows they're crooked. And it makes me think of that verse, when the wicked rule, the people groan. But here's something. So if we're gonna take these things, they're not going to dictate our thoughts. They're not going to dictate our theology, but we're going to use them to compare them to God and see why he's worthy of worship. We can take that. We can look at the people we know, the rulers we know, and compare it to the ruler we really know. Here's what we know about him. His work is perfect. His work is perfect, for all his ways are just. Isn't that a great verse? Isn't that a blessing to hear that, to realize, there are men and women all over the world today who are tasked with leading, and they are abusive and crooked in the way that they use their power. And it's a hopeless situation, if not for the King of Kings who rules over all. His work is perfect. For all his ways are just, a God of faithfulness and without injustice, righteous and upright is he. He is light, and in him there's no darkness, which is baffling when you think about what we said at the beginning. How do you know what light is? Well, because of darkness. It's when you begin to take away from the light and the darkness comes in that you can see and appreciate what the light is. But God is light, and in him there is no darkness. He's the exact opposite of darkness. And it's like the 119th Psalm says over and over, the law of the Lord is perfect. The law of the Lord sustains us. The law of the Lord nourishes us. Can you say that about the law or the laws, Congress, or any other king? That they're perfect, all their ways are just, that they're faithful and without injustice, that they're righteous and upright? You can't. But you can compare them to him. You can say, I'm so thankful that I serve a God, that I am ruled by a God who is righteous. And so you see, all we're doing is we're thinking on things, whatever is lovely, whatever is pure, whatever is excellent, whatever is praiseworthy, whatever is good. When you think about that, God, thank you that you're righteous. Thank you that you're faithful, just. Another thing that comes to mind when thinking that through is how selfless he is. selfless, which is the opposite of self-serving. Self-serving says me, give me, give me. I'm going to use for myself. Selfless says I'm going to give. Israel had bad shepherds. That was part of what we read not long ago. God saying that they have these shepherds who abuse them. They abuse the flock for their own purposes. They take advantage of people. They hurt people. It's not particularly different today. We've seen leaders who use their power to get their own pet projects. We've seen them with something like the stimulus bill, with giving away so much money and almost slapping the Americans in the face over it. I heard one politician who is not this way talking about it. And he said, a lot of people come here with good intentions and they believe they're going to be different, but then they get here and they have to compromise. They have to make deals. And so it starts out as one small deal. Sign this bill for me and I'll sign this bill for you. But then it leads to another compromise and another and another. And before you know it, the guy doesn't even have freedom to act on his own will. Can't. Because he's part of the swamp now. He's in that game. And they eventually sell out. Well, that's kind of depressing. But whatever is good, think on these things. How about this one? Whatsoever the Lord wills, that does he. Whatsoever the Lord wills, that does he. On earth, heavens, and in all deep places. And what is it that God wills? What does God want? How about the 23rd Psalm? The Lord is my shepherd. We could look at the things that we can't control and we could get very angry about those things. And by the way, the stuff we're talking about tonight, it's about our leaders. We could apply it to anything. Anything that has control over us, we could apply it to those things. And each of those will point us toward God. The flaws in those things, the shortcomings of those things, highlight and help us define the goodness and the greatness of God. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That's his will for you. Look, I can't in confidence say that all of the leaders of our country put the fact that we shall not want first. And that could make me angry, and that could make me hopeless, and that could make me nihilistic. Except for the one thing that we understand. We can rejoice in the Lord always. Because we see these petty kings, we see these rulers who God has put over us. We see their shortcomings. And we say, you know what? This may be full of flaws. But God is not. He is my shepherd. I shall not want. You feel alienated? You have very little representation? It's the world. You're strangers and aliens. These things happen to us. They happen to us the most when we're looking down, we're looking around. And I've told you before, the sermons that mean the most, at least to me, mean as much as they do because I'm preaching into myself. We could watch the news today and get very discouraged and very distracted. But my job is to help you get past that. It's to help you put your attention where it's supposed to be. Set your mind on things above. Whatever is lovely, whatever is pure, whatever is commendable, whatever is excellent. So we can take these things, we can say, I really don't like this, but let's look at what a good ruler looks like. That's our God. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me paths of righteousness for his name's sake, and even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now, let me ask you something. Was he writing this at a time when he felt good about the things that were happening around him? Surely goodness, surely mercy will follow me all the days of my life. That sounds like something someone would say when everything was going right. And in a way, I guess it was. Where are you, David? In the valley of the shadow of death. Are things going right? Yes, they are. What do you mean things are going right? How could they be going right if you're in the valley of the shadow of death? Because the Lord is with me. That's his will. Whatsoever the Lord wills, that does he. He does what he wants. And it doesn't matter if it's on earth, in the heavens, or in the deepest places. His will was that he would set aside his glory, come to the earth for us. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. He gave up his life so that he could be raised, be the firstborn among many brethren, and lead us as our shepherd. So you see, it's good. It's good to compare things that happen around us against our God. See what we can learn about him. Another thing, one of those things that just came to mind while I was making this list is how personal he is. We don't have a personal connection, unless some of you just do and I don't know it. None of us in here has a personal connection to the president or the future president. Not even our congressmen, senators. We don't know them. More importantly, they don't know us. If something happened to you or your spouse or one of your children tonight, that person would never know the difference. Our governor doesn't know you. At best, we might know our mayors because we have such small towns. But they have no knowledge of us, and we have no access, no real access to them. Just think about that. How would you, especially tonight, how would you get to the White House? If you wanted to go and talk to the president, what could you do? Why even try? I promise you, your chances of being arrested are far higher than your chances of actually getting to where you want to be. Because you have no rightful access. And why should you? That can lead to feelings of alienation. That can lead to feelings of no representation. I didn't vote for some of these people. I don't know them. They don't know me. They don't care about me. They don't vote on my behalf. They don't make laws on my behalf. Now let's compare that to God. What kind of ruler is he? When we say our God reigns, what do we have in mind? When we say this is what his rule is known for, you knit me together in the inward place. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it. You know me. When Christ was on the cross, it was for you as a person. He says, I know my sheep. I know them by name. And every one of them will come to me. And you have, because of that, personal, instant, full-time access. You can speak with the King of Kings, far higher than any government official. And he's the king who is righteous and selfless. So when you come in, you don't come in as a constituent or as a subject, you come in as a son. You come in as family. You see, it's good to take these things and compare them. It's good to look at the darkness so that you can see the light. It's good to learn about God. The last thing I want to compare them against him in is in their longevity. Aren't you thankful that their time is temporary? You know, none of us wants to die. Would you really want to live forever here? Would you really want the people who are in charge today to live forever? Some of them, that's the only way they're going to go. They're going to have to die of old age. I'm talking about old age. Israel's kings died. That's the whole point of what we saw there in Kings. Because of that, they had no permanent kingdom. They couldn't be true saviors because they couldn't even save themselves. And it's the same thing we have now. They come and go. They can't save themselves. In fact, all of them need to be saved. They can't save us. They can't save themselves. They are dependent on God as much as we are. You know, the scripture says when the promise of Christ was made, of his kingdom there will be no end. Of his righteous, selfless, personal rule, there will be no end. I don't know if you noticed last night we were traveling most of the day, and we got home pretty late, and I looked up at the stars when we got home. I was just amazed. It was really clear last night. You could see millions of stars. And it just made me stop and think about who put those stars there. All this stuff happening around us. Important stuff, historic stuff. We should be involved. We should pay attention. We should take action. But we don't do it at the expense. We don't do it in a way that we fail to look up at the stars and remember who put them there. The world is on fire. No, it's not. Look at where we are. Everything's falling to pieces. No, it's really not. The stars are all in their same place. They were in that same place last night. They'll be in the same place tomorrow night. Because the God who put them there knows them each by name. Of his kingdom there will be no end. The nations rage and the peoples plot in vain. But the Lord has them in derision. I, he says, will set my king on my holy hill. That is the difference between him and them. And that is the difference between us living in fear and rejoicing in all things. What's our response to this? I'm going to give you two parts to it. Two verses, two passages. First one is in 1 Timothy chapter 2. Paul says, I urge that supplications and prayers and intercessions and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. That's the first part of our response, then, isn't it? Because our God who reigns has made it plain to us. He has given us the government we have. You might say it's hard to find anything redeeming about it. I don't disagree. It's not anarchy. It's not war. It's not oppression. We have good lives. Pray for our rulers so that we can continue in these good lives. Pray that we'll have leaders who are wise, that leaders who care about righteousness, so that we can live quiet, peaceful lives, godly and dignified in every way. Don't forget that. You know, when he wrote that, there were emperors. Think of the politician you dislike the most. You got that person in your mind? He or she is not Julius Caesar. Not as bad as the emperors of Rome. Might be if the constraints were taken away, but that's the point. They're not. So pray for them. Pray for the ones you love and pray for the ones you have a really hard time loving. Pray for them because they're wicked. Pray for them because they're selfish. Pray for them because they're just like us. We want to live peaceful, quiet lives. Second part of this response is from the 89th Psalm. Starting just at the very beginning, first 4 verses. I will sing of the steadfast love of the Lord forever. With my mouth I will make known your faithfulness to all generations. For I said, steadfast love will be built up forever. Now look, we're talking about his reign. Our God reigns. When the psalmist thought of this, he said, steadfast love will be built up forever. In the heavens you establish your faithfulness. You have said, I have made a covenant with my chosen one. I have sworn to David my servant. I will establish your offspring forever and build your throne for all generations. Here we have a promise of Christ. And the response is, I will sing. I will praise you because your covenant is trustworthy, because your faithfulness is established. Don't lose your heads. Okay? The world's not burning. If it does, it's exactly where God wants it to go, and he promised it'll happen. It's not. We're going to be okay. We're going to pray for those people. And we're going to sing praises to him. Jesus, tonight we are thankful to you that you reign. And I pray that you would calm our hearts and comfort us by reminding us of who you are. Lord, may every flaw and every shortcoming and every hardship and every bit of suffering that we see remind us. May they inform our definition of you. May we see how your light shines, how sharp you are compared to what is dull, how good you are compared to what is bad, how righteous compared to what is wicked. May we praise you for it and in it. You alone are worthy. And that's why we say, come quickly. In your name, amen.